Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about why League is such a passive game and what's more important, getting kills or CS, which was a comment and kind of a question that we had. And, I think that what people need to understand is that, first off, League is a very passive game, even if you don't see it played that way at your rank. The reality is that people all the way up, through Masters and through GM are playing very aggressively because they're learning the game and they're learning their champions. And that's totally okay. So we had a lot of comments on this little section snippet of a video that I did before. And what we were talking about when we were talking about win cons is that League is actually a very passive game, but that in order to learn how to play League well, you have to play very aggressively. Otherwise, you won't learn what your champion can do to the finest degree at different stages of the game. And I compared this to a really similar situation because you see this in all kinds of other games, with a game that's really like this, which is PUBG, or any battle royale game like Fortnite or whatever, where if you want to actually win the game, your best chance of winning the game is to not engage with anyone, because every time you engage with another player at an equal skill level to you, roughly speaking, and this could even be true with League, you're kind of 50-50ing it, like if they outplay you, there's maybe a 50% chance that you live and there's a 50% chance that you die. Now, maybe that's a little bit more true in a shooter game than it is in a game like League. Obviously, there are going to be certain situations where they mess up and your chances of winning that fight, 1v1 or 2v2, go up drastically, or they literally just, if you play the thing correctly, they literally can't kill you. So I would argue that there are scenarios that are much more like 80-20 or whatever. But the point is that you take a huge amount of risk every time you go in and try to fight somebody and try to kill them. And I'm encouraging you to take that risk. So in PUBG, I got to top 200, like I talked about early on in PUBG, and I got there with a 0.3 KD, just surviving very long into the rounds. In fact, I used such a crazy strategy that I had come up with. There were boats, okay, and I would get in a boat and drive out into the middle of the ocean until the zone forced me to come in. And the zone would force me in a little bit, and then I'd stay at the edge of the water, as far out as I could be, and then when I would finally be forced to land, depending on where the zone was, I would end up landing when there were 10 or 20 people left. So I barely got any loot because I was mostly like looting a shed or something like that and going straight for a boat. And so I was at a severe disadvantage when I got to the later part of the game because A, I wasn't good at shooting anybody, or playing shooters, and B, I didn't have any good weapons or loot, so I was usually stuck with like absolute garbage, like a pistol or a shotgun or an SMG instead of a real gun. And so I was going to lose, the 1v1 at the end of the game. But I was optimizing my positional placement to the point where I was placing 10th place like half of my games or higher. It's similar in League, actually, which is that the higher up you go, once you have proper champion mastery, at a certain point you need to start playing really passively. And the reason for that is because fog of war makes the game a information nightmare where you just don't know what's going on most of the time. And if you don't know what's going on and where the enemy jungler is most of the time, you have to respect the fact that even if you think they could be somewhere else, there's a possibility that they are just right next to you, waiting in a bush in your lane, or right off the side of your lane, ready to kill you. And so good players, especially if you're playing at the highest level, you look at, professional games and stuff like that, good players will play very passively if they don't have full information on where the enemy team is. We've covered this before. I keep saying the only way you can die if you have good champion mastery is if you lose track of where somebody is on the other team. So what this means is that because of fog of war, we don't know where the enemy jungler is 80% of the time, So that means that 80% of the time we really shouldn't be fighting and going in. But if you're a lower elo player and you don't have the champion mastery, or if you're trying to learn a new champion, you need to play aggressively regardless. You need to coin flip, because if you don't coin flip, the amount that you'll learn from playing 1,000 games where you play respectful of the enemy jungler. And if you don't know where all 5 people are on the enemy team, you don't know where their mid is, or you don't know where their jungler is. If you play that respectfully and that passively, you will not learn nearly as fast as if you play aggressively. And so if you're trying to learn a new champion, or your champion mastery even on your main champion isn't that high because you're sitting like below diamond, below masters or something like that, then you need to limit test. And it's okay to die 8, 9, 10 times a game in order to learn how your champion fights, how it fights at different versus different champions in different circumstances with different item conditions, etc. So you have to fight in order to learn the game. So it's this conundrum of, at what point do I stop fighting as much, and the diminishing returns, because I'm already so good at the champion that I'm playing that I'm getting diminishing returns by continuing to fight, and now I need to actually start playing the game properly. For me, I would say that you should, in my opinion, but maybe this is right or wrong, my opinion is that you should probably stop limit testing once you get to maybe D4 or Masters or something like that. I feel like if you are able to take one champion that you're really good at, or maybe a couple, and you're able to play those champions to like mid diamond or masters or something like that, your mechanics are about as good as they're going to get, and your mechanics will still slowly improve as you are forced to improve playing versus better players, as you see better players playing champions differently and stuff like that, as you're forced to adapt to the way they're playing their champions better. But at a certain point, you're already good enough at the champion mechanically that you're getting kind of diminished returns from continuing to practice the champion, and instead you need to focus on playing the game properly. So there's a certain point where you kind of have to transition into playing passively, being respectful of the fact that the enemy jungler could be there at any second, and playing the game passively like it's supposed to be played. So what I would recommend doing, obviously fastest way to learn, is you take one champion, you limit test that champion really hard, you fight over and over again, you just play really aggressively. This is how most people naturally want to play the game anyways, because it's fun to fight people. You're not playing the game to sit there and AFK, or to sit there and farm, or to, back off of a wave and not even farm when you don't know where people are. You're not playing the game like that, right? You're playing the game because it's fun. Even people who are like trying to win their ranked games, if you're in gold, if you're in silver, even if you're trying to win your ranked games, you don't want to just like AFK the whole game. You're still playing the game both to win your ranked games and for fun. And so you want to play the game. And I'm telling you that that's totally good, because you need to do that in order to learn the game properly. But there's that certain point where you've got to transition and play the game respectfully. So now, why is it optimal to play the game so respectfully, and why is it so boring, right? It's like, as we talked about, Fog of War basically makes it impossible, even if you have really good champion mastery, to know that the play that you're going for is correct. Because even if you hard win a 2v2 bot lane, for example, and I know that I hard win a 2v2 bot lane if they step up in a certain way, or walk to a certain spot, or I have certain abilities up, or we have a certain advantage or whatever, if they do that, we could go in, but if we don't know where the enemy jungler is, or we don't know where the mid laner is, and they could be walking bot, we're doing what's called coin flipping. Even if odds are that we don't get punished for it, and, more than 50% of the time, their jungler doesn't show up or their mid laner doesn't show up, even if we're successful 60% of the time and don't get punished for it, what we're doing is taking a huge percentage of the time, like 40% or 45%, where their jungler or their mid laner does show up and turn the play around, and we're throwing the game on a coin flip play where we don't have good enough information to actually make sure that the play is going to be successful. So that's what I consider to be coin flipping. Coin flipping to me is taking a fight that's either really, really thin and you're not sure whether you're going to win 50-50, you should be taking plays, obviously, especially in bot lane where you're relying on a teammate to play things a certain way. You should be taking fights that are more like 60-40 plus in your favor. But if you don't know where the enemy jungler is, it better be even higher than that, because if the enemy jungler or the enemy mid is missing and then they show up bot lane, you're completely throwing potentially your entire lane on your first engagement or something like that, over a play that, was maybe 60-40 and will come up again if you're just more patient. They'll give you the opportunity, especially the lower rank you go. They're going to give you opportunities, 100-0 opportunity one time. They're going to guaranteed, in bronze or silver, they're going to mess up and kill themselves for free in the lane, even if you're just farming the whole time and not playing aggressively at all. They're going to give you 80-20 opportunities. They're going to give you 70-30 opportunities. Meaning that it's like sometimes it's most of the vast majority of the time it should work out, but sometimes your AD carry is going to play it really poorly. Sometimes their jungler is going to be there, their mid laner is going to be there. So it's just the fact that there's Fog of War makes it at a high level so that once you have enough champion mastery, you have to play really safe, because basically any time their jungler is missing or their mid laner is missing, you should just never use an ability even, let alone like jump in or trade aggressively. And if you do that, you will get stuck, because rather than being able to win 60% of your games, you're going to be coin flipping so much that your win rate is going to trend closer to 50%, because sometimes in half of your games, their jungler's not going to show up a couple of times in a row. You're going to snowball a really big lead on their bot lane for understanding your champion well. But guess what happens? Even though you're a really good player and you can do that consistently to their bot lane and know when you win versus their bot lane and they don't, and you know that better than them, you'll still end up not doing as well as you could, because you end up in the other half of the games, their jungler or their mid does show up and does turn the play around, and now you're losing lane and you can't recover because it's hard to play from behind. And so now you've just coin flipped enough games away that rather than winning 60% of your games, you're winning 52% of your games. And it's like a really slow climb, rather than, something that should be easier or more consistent for you. I'm just watching a coin flip play happen on screen right now, so just not good. But goodness. Yeah, we may have coin flipped that one. You get the point, right? So that's why the game becomes so boring at high elo. It's just because of Fog of War. You just have to play respectful of the fact that anybody could show up at any time. It's even worse considering certain roles like support are free to roam all over the place. So imagine you're a challenger top laner, or you're playing top lane in, the LCK or the LCS. If their support's missing and on a recall and like walking back, you don't know if their support's walking back mid or top or bot. And so you don't assume that their support was in base and then going to walk back to bot lane. You have no idea whether that's the case or not. So what you're going to have to do, if you're that type of player who's paying attention, a challenger top laner who's paying attention to where enemy support is, when the enemy support's back in base, you can't play aggressive. You can't 1v1 their top laner. You can't do anything. So, what are you supposed to do? Basically, you just can't play. You just farm and you play safe. So that's the issue. Now, this causes the game to be very, very boring. It almost makes you think, like, if League of Legends was a game where there was no Fog of War, what would the game be like? Imagine you could see that their jungler was top the whole time, and so you could play aggressively much more often. Maybe it would end up where people realized that they needed to play safe more when their jungler was showing top. That's already something people, kind of get at higher elo. But it's the same thing. So, like, the way that you see me play, and I've talked about this before too, is you combine the champion mastery that I got from inting thousands of games in low elo with the understanding that I have of the game now, having played in like GM and Masters, and you combine the two together, and what you get is most of the time I'm playing passively, but the second that their jungler shows up top or shows mid, and we see their mid laner and we see their top laner, and I know that we win 2v2 bot, I'm all in on their bot lane in like a second. I'm Wing forward, I'm flashing forward, I'm instantly like flash ulting their bot lane the second I see their jungler show up top. And the reason for that is because I don't even want to give their bot lane time to think and realize that, like, hey, our jungler just showed top, we need to be careful here. Maybe their jungler's going to make a counterplay bot, or their bot lane's going to go in on us because they know they can't get ganked right now. I don't even want to give them time to think about that. I just want to instantly go in on them. So as soon as I see their jungler or whatever show top, it's just boom, I'm in on their bot lane. And so you're combining the aggressiveness that you have when you're limit testing, and that you understand from your champion mastery that you have. You're combining that with the patience that's required to play the game at a high level, where you're not just coin flipping. So no coin flipping, but still good aggressive mechanical gameplay when you actually have the information to do that. Yeah, how would you describe that? It's kind of an explosiveness, right? Where the enemy has to realize and be playing around the fact that their jungler's top. And you'd be surprised how many players, even in, high masters, low masters, even in GM, are not paying good enough attention to that strong side, weak side dynamic. And so they don't realize, oh, my jungler's showing top. I can't play my lane the way I would normally play my lane. I need to be careful. I need to back up. Because all of a sudden, someone who is playing passive, and it baits them in too, because someone who is playing passive versus them, even if they were walked up in the same spot in lane, it's confusing, right? Because you think, oh, well, it's a matter of if I'm walking up too far. So if I walk up too far and the Braum or the Leona goes in on me, then I die. But you get into high elo and it's like, oh, the Leona's not going in on me here, or the Braum's not going in on me here, so I'm fine. And then you walk up that far, and completely unrelated to you, because one time that you walked up that far, your jungler was showing top. Now I'm all in on that person and they're dead. And they're kind of subconsciously wondering, why did I die there when I've been walking up like this the whole game and not, had any problems with it? So, I mean, that's basically the gist of it. I hope that helps you guys reconcile those two things. Again, if you're playing, D4, maybe even D3, D4 or below, you should definitely just still be limit testing and working on your mechanics and champion mastery. Even if you're above that, you're like Masters Plus, like me, for example, you can bet if I'm playing a champion other than Braum, I'm going to need to limit test a little bit. Which is why I would prefer probably to not play that on my main account. I need to limit test in order to learn some other champions at the same level. And so I have a lot of games of experience on other support champions. But if I wanted to get it honed in at the same level as my Braum is, I would need to limit test a little bit, on another account or something like that. That's like high enough elo that it would be practical. So below those ranks, you do want to be limit testing. You do want to be killing yourself. You don't want to play the game properly, because you have to learn the fundamentals and the mechanics of the game and your champion's limits. Once you get the champion mastery, then you switch to playing safe at a certain point, because you're getting diminishing returns on what you're even fixing with your champion mastery anyways. And most of the improvement from your champion, the way you're playing your champion, is going to come from playing against better players who are going to force you to use your abilities and play your champion in a slightly different way anyways to play against them better. And that will only come if you climb to a high enough rank by playing the game properly, by not coin flipping, that you're playing against better players who can then challenge the way that you're playing your champion a little bit. And then you'll make some, adjustments playing against those players. Maybe you won't be able to get away with as much as you could have in lower ranks. And you'll adjust and you'll adapt. And then that's pretty much it. Then you play passively, you play respectfully, you don't coin flip, you're aware of where the enemy mid laner is, you're aware of where the enemy jungler is, and you use that information to actually play the game properly. So I hope that this also helped you guys. It was a bit of a yap fest, but that is the style. People told me they wanted to see some more gameplay footage again in the videos, but I can't be bothered to actually edit gameplay footage. So here's a replay that's auto playing. But yeah, good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.